That sound you hear is a tape machine in the corner of a cluttered menagerie of musical instruments, consoles, slides, buttons, and knobs. Nestled in an expanded garage in the Sleeping Brotherhood Music Studios on the outskirts of the Five Points neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. And that tape is in the record position. When it comes to capturing and delivering sound and vibrations, music producers and audio engineers are the midwives of music. Whether it's George Martin producing the Beatles, or Emily Lazar working with Sonic Youth, or Quincy Jones producing Michael Jackson, when it comes to groundbreaking, memorable moments in Western music, the people behind the recording console may be just as important as the people in the recording booth. Music isn't just sound, it's emotion. There's always a story to the riffs and lines and melodies that take us to romantic heights and plummet us into caverns of melancholy, and we get to hear and experience those different elevations of emotion, all in a controlled, safe environment. And so, the engineer is controlling the levels. They are the person mixing the drinks, the person cooking up the food. They are hosting this celebration of emotion and life. And if their hosting skills are shabby and expectations aren't met or exceeded, the party is lame. So the album or CD or MP3 or SoundCloud link is lame too, and that makes everything else kind of lame. So what isn't lame? What is authentic when it comes to sound? What is the difference between a full church organ on an iPad and a small Wurlitzer in a church basement? Why is the sound of Colorado's blue sky a part of our lasting contribution to American music? And how can the experimental feel of culture in Colorado guide our paths forward in music, art, and life? That's what we're talking about. And
This is the Colorado Vibe.
Welcome back to the Colorado Vibe, the mile-high sound experience that allows you to hear the sounds, listen to the locations, and discover the frequencies and folk that define the Colorado Vibe. I'm your host, Jake Sanders, and today's show is about recording sound itself, more specifically music, capturing the vibe of a song on tape. And to help us explore this topic, we're headed to see an old friend,
Kyle Richard Jones, musician and sound engineer,
at his recording studio, the Sleeping Brotherhood. And as we settled down amongst all the gear and Grammys and goodies, got the mic set up, I asked him, what does sound mean to you in your life?
Sound. What does sound mean? Sound is communication on the most basic, not meaning simple, but like foundational level. Vibration, frequency. You know, when they talk about, when Tesla or Einstein talk about, like, if you want to understand the universe, understand vibration and frequency. Obviously, you don't have to travel too far from that to understand that there's a sound to that vibration and that frequency. And in my little world of music, you curate and cultivate sounds in this particular range that we as humans can interpret through our hearing, and it shows up, right? There's no doubt that the type of sound that I play with and deal with shows up in our world as a language of emotion. There's a reason that there's a soundtrack to every piece of moving picture you watch. Like it's very informative. Sometimes, well, obviously in certain arenas, more informative and more influential than words.
What are some of the projects that you've worked on? List some of those emotions that you've evoked with sound. What are some of the artists' albums?
You know, locally I worked with just a lot of I help people manage their emotions in sound, right? Like, right? Like I help them get at what they're trying to, I help them, get something recorded that hopefully tells the story that they're trying to tell. The biggest feather in my cap was a few years ago now, a rap band out of Colorado called the Flowbots. I did their first record before they got signed to a label, and that record got picked up as is, right? The label didn't re-record it. They took what we made here, what they made, with a bunch of other people besides just me, but I was just kind of the last guy to dot the I's and cross the T's on it. There's a lot, every genre. I'm an inner, I live in the middle of the city. I grew up in the suburbs, right. But I live in the middle of the city, and so I've done hip hop, I've done film work, I've done accordion duos, I've done, but mainly it's what I guess would be classified as your good old American rock and roll, popular music kind of stuff. Guitars, drums, bass, vocals, keyboards. What I usually get involved with. Smaller groups, smaller ensembles, but yeah, I mean, sound and music, you find yourself in a lot of situations you maybe weren't thinking that you would necessarily end up, in some church recording, sections of the Colorado Symphony Orchestra. Like, okay, this is what we're doing today, and you get on that vibe, listen to those vibrations and those frequencies,
Right.
Yeah, the foundations of this stuff. When you ask me, what is sound to me, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's technically and literally, in the true meaning of the word, literally, right? what it is. It's frequencies. It's frequency of something is vibrating, and in those books and that stuff that's way over my head, that's what they say the universe is.
We're surrounded by knobs, and we're surrounded by slides and plugs and knobs and whistles and doodads and keyboards of all sizes. And maybe you can only express those emotions if you have certain gear, or is there a connection in between the limitations? Because here I am maybe expressing myself on the guitar. Why would I want to use a theremin? Can you get the same expression on a conga? Would you be able to plug yourself into some algorithm in your fancy doodad analog modular synthesizer that could get you there? Like, maybe speak to equipment being a vessel.
I don't remember who said this to me once, but as a recording engineer, it was said to me is like, look, all we're doing is we're taking that stuff out of the wall, the plug, the electricity out of the wall, and we're amplifying it and manipulating it and modulating it, right? But in the luxurious world that we get to live in capturing this stuff, right? Like the time and place where we have many varieties and many ways of recording, capturing these vibrations. So I guess when you look around and you see the spaceship that I sit in every day, it's just really just a sign of the times. It's like, well, this is the stuff that is the current fashions of what you record sound with. And it's really interesting too when you look around and you see the knobs and stuff, and you're a musician, right? Like, yeah. We've kind of been in this elongated renaissance of there's all this new stuff, and then it seems like more like the more the new stuff comes at us, the more we're like, yeah, I kind of like my grandma's old organ. That sounded better than this virtual thing that's on my computer that does everything that the original one does, but does it? Look, with anything, I suppose, any world you choose to invest yourself into, there's the possibility of corruption. I don't know, get into some like quantum physics kind of ideas, but it's like the observer changes the observed, and so like, yeah, there's no doubt that probably the percentage of artists will talk about their most creative times being not the time when they were afforded all the luxuries and everything they wanted, right? But I don't know how you self-edit, or it's like you're always on a trek for discovery. You're always on I mean, how sometimes you listen to some old stuff you did and you're like, wow, what happened to that guy? That guy was good. That guy could have done some things. And then the other day I listened to an old recording. A client of mine was coming through, and she was like, we were digging stuff we recorded 10 years ago, and a lot of it sounded really good. And she was like, oh yeah, and this song's already done. We already finished this one. And she played the version that I finished for her to shoot this video she shot for it. And I was like, a boo. I didn't like it at all. And I was like, and it was me, it was like, I did it. I was like, why did you double all those vocals? And then so, we're all, being a sign of the times and being a slave to the times, maybe jumping ahead a little bit in what you're kind of like feeling out as far as the Colorado centric idea of what is sound, and
right.
Colorado, and in particular, the sound of music that you and I, being musicians, deal with as Colorado is like. Can I say that I think maybe as artists here, when it comes to music, that we've been kind of in a very comfortable place, but a place that maybe until recent times didn't have I don't know if this place had a lot of the markers that before you hit the record button, we were talking about the Playing for Change guy, and how he said that some of the scariest places he's ever been in the world recording music is where he's found the most expressive and amazing musicians. And we were like, yeah, there's this definite correlation between oppression and the art that comes out the other side when people aren't allowed to express themselves in this way or that way or the other way, right? And in a good way, maybe the history of Colorado is not like splattered with a lot of drama as other places. And the culture here is kind of all transplants, right? Like, or it's not the deepest culture in the world. And, as America being a young place in general, compared to you go to Europe and you're like, course. Yeah, this is 2,000 years old.
Lots
and like
of
find
culture.
something that's 2,000 years old here.
That we haven't paved over.
Right. That we just, that, and yeah, you might find a couple totem poles up in
Arrowheads,
Washington or something like that.
Exactly
but,
right. Yep.
But right. Obviously, the culture here is very young. So you go back, and from east to west, it gets as you travel west, it gets very much younger. Like people looking for antique furniture in L.A. Good luck. Like, like antique furniture in L.A. is like 50s plastic. Not even plastic. You guys know what I'm talking about. So it's a very young place. The influence of the new shiny dial or the new sound, I think, has been very influential in Colorado. Unless like, what does Colorado have that? What is the sound of Colorado, or what is the thing that Colorado has? Well, like Colorado has more elevation change, right, than any other state in the union. You can go to high plains deserts, to flatlands, to tundra, right? To like tree line and tundra and the source of water and all that kind of stuff. And so, like, getting into its element, there's those sounds, like the sounds of the mountains and the sounds of the source of the stream, birds and the hawks and the and the the sound of the amazingly blue sky. You know, I don't know if you've ever been to the West, places like Colorado and Montana, you know, the big sky state. Well, there's a reason if you've been trapped in LA or New York or the coasts with clouds and, you know, this gray kind of thing. There's a certain blue to the sky out here. And it's, you know, the dirty secret's been out for a long time that the sun shines every day out here. Even when it snows, the sun shines. So there's that kind of sound. But in the modern expression that often comes with sound and music, Colorado's been a pretty tame place. Sometimes the sound or the expression you want to as an artist, as I've come through, often the source hasn't been local with what they're, you know, the source. Now, speaking to that, I think I wish I was a young person. I'm still glad to be here and a part of it at my current age.
It's time for your vitamins, Kyle.
Yeah. Looking back, growing up in the 70s and 80s in Colorado, and then looking around now, like, I don't think the young version of me talking to you in 30 years would be saying the same kind of thing. Like, there's definitely not a void now. There's kind of this place, which is very isolated. Colorado is, you know, you're not going to find another city bigger than Colorado in 500 miles in any direction. So it's kind of a landlocked little island. Maybe the reason they let us
go on with our weed experiment.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, but you know, that weed experiment was kind of like a breakthrough for, I think, a certain identity.
Interesting.
Right. And then back to the sound, you know,
Sure.
a certain vibration, right? There's a certain, you go to certain places and you feel it. Like what is it that you're feeling when you supposedly, you know, are in Miami and you just can feel the salsa, or you're in Chicago and you can just feel the blues,
or New
Orleans, right? You can just, right, these places where you're like, okay, this vibration is in the walls.
Yes.
These things are porous, right?
In the sky, like just what you were saying.
It comes up. I don't know. My experience is that, wow, that vibration, again, and a lot of these vibrations are set off by traumatic or, you know, real deep things, you know, the emotions, right? And especially music and sound, right? Conveying those emotions so well, better than any other thing, you know, like the, you know, music makes bad poetry E.E. Cummings, right? You know, like, it's just like, wow, right? It's really been interesting to still be a part of it, still helping these people create the sound and being kind of on the edge of the Renaissance. We're like, okay, we're starting to think a little different and independently. Our vibration is no longer an echo of what we heard coming from over there, coming from the coasts and stuff. A lot of my youth was, I think, the sounds and the stuff it was echoes, and those echoes are always a little late, right? They're behind in their nature. So, but now in this place, I hear, you know, I go to UMS.
UMS is the underground music showcase, held annually in Denver to promote local music and culture.
And I walk around and I'm like, where did these kids come from? Like, what's their backstory? You know, like that feeling of like, what's going on here?
The Colorado Vibe continues, but first, a word from our sponsor.
Since 1977, the Colorado trial attorneys of the Sawaya Law Firm have helped our clients seek justice when they've been injured. I'm Rob Wilhite, athlete, trial attorney, father, and partner at the Sawaya Law Firm. We're proud to put on the Colorado Vibe podcast because we know that serving the Colorado community is about connecting and listening, just as much as it is about seeking justice for our clients. There really is no difference between one lawyer and the next. We all have access to the same case law, but we might not all be equal in the same way we serve and listen to our clients and lead them to successful results. On my runs, I'm always listening to books, podcasts, concerts, music, or just the sounds of nature. So thank you for listening, and until next time, this is the Colorado Vibe.
Here, when you're working, what is your favorite sound? Is your favorite sound music? I mean, is your favorite sound sonorous collection? You should just kind of answer this. What's your least favorite sound?
Yeah, I don't know if I have. My favorite sound is authenticity.
Explain that.
Well, it's right. It's something we all know. What was like the Supreme Court justice when he was
in reference to porn.
Right.
I know it when I see it.
Like I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. Well, like one of my favorite things to pull out sometimes when people are singing in the recording booth and they're trying to get everything right, or they're like I'll chide them and I'll be like, are you even thinking about the girl you wrote this song about, or are you just trying to hit the right notes? Because guess what, whether you're educated in music theory, or you're just a regular person who just like enjoys music, we can all tell, right? I had a friend who tells this story about how his mom drug him to a Pavarotti concert. And he's like, right? He's like, dude, I was bawling by the end. It's like he wasn't even singing in English, right? I was like, there are no flukes. Like Pavarotti is Pavarotti for a effing reason, right? Like there's no joke. And he was like, I was bawling.
Wow.
He was like, so authenticity, like that's what that guy obviously can do. And that's what, when you hear it, so, and it can come through anything. It can come through a flute. It can come through this crazy
modular synthesizer crazy thing,
chords and knobs, and basically it's a gigantic analog computer. It can come from these digital computers that we have. It can come from anything, but when it happens, I was talking about, kind of alluding to, like, a lot of the buttons and knobs you see around here are kind of older buttons and knobs. There aren't there's the new ones. There are new ones. When you showed up this morning, I was telling you how I'm excited because I just bought a new computer and it's going to help me work, and that's definitely new knobs and new buttons.
Right.
But a lot of the buttons that I've cultivated recently are older buttons and knobs and pianos and keyboards and stuff. But really what they are is they are proven commodities as far as these instruments express themselves. And so, often I think we experiment with music and tones and things that express themselves for a time and seem, but then don't hold up over time. How many old Cure songs do you listen to? You're like, man, that's a really good song if it wasn't for that crazy gated snare. Just right. What's your favorite sound is authenticity, because authenticity can make something that's not supposed to sound good or sound right. There's when the user is authentically two turntables and a microphone or whatever, like authenticity makes, these things that you're like, makes Casio keyboards sound amazing, because it's like, no, that brother over there is speaking real talk versus
through that Casio
versus maybe something that I was kind of alluding to before, when, real talk isn't what you think it should be. Real talk just comes out of you, like real expression, real emotion. And often I guess as humans, we need help really getting brave enough to say and do what we really feel versus what is the popular step and shoes to wear at the time.
So here you're talking about authenticity.
That's your favorite sound. What's your least favorite sound? It couldn't just be faking the funk. I mean, is it that easy?
Well,
is it an oboe? What is it?
It's
specific?
Well, I'm gonna be kind of base here and just say my least favorite sound is digital recording.
How can you tell?
Like it's a good question because I'm probably gonna have to just work through it here as I'm talking to you.
It's okay, we're here.
Because it's like, what is my least favorite sound? And I'm like, God, that sound that bores in my ears from working in this digital medium. What is it about digital? So I guess I don't want to be so negative towards it because it's an amazing thing, like you said, like how much more music reaches people. Again, we saw the thing in the desert, and they were Bluetoothing over their cell phones.
That's how they said that.
Like this new music erupted out of the middle of the Sahara Desert.
And you couldn't imagine that the audio quality from a Bluetooth cell phone MP3 transfer, I mean, that's like wood in the vinyl times.
Yeah.
What?
Earbuds
right there. AirPods, don't even.
Laptop speakers.
Dr. Dre Beats headphones.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like, so there's all this. The canvas, the painting that this canvas can end up on is vast. Mm-hmm. And digital being one of those. Digital is very matter of fact, and it's uncolored or unbiased. What you give it is what it plays back for you. Now, throughout the history of recording, a lot of the things we used to complain about, or the engineers complained about, that, you record to tape and it sounds a little bit different than what you recorded. There's qualities to the tape that influence the sound that gets recorded. So you had to compensate, right? Things on tape usually come back a little duller than they occurred in real life as you were recording them. So there was tons of equipment and things that were made to compensate for that. Brighter microphones and EQs that brighten things.
Interesting.
But there was also a lot of things in analog that we took for granted that now that they're gone in digital, that we didn't realize that there was a certain part of that hiss that created a more interesting canvas, or there was a certain part of, there's little distortions and little things in there that we didn't know we liked until they were gone. Right. So I think when the analog versus digital thing starts to come up, that's usually what people are trying to describe, that they maybe don't have the lexicon to really get in deep into. Is like, I don't know, I just like my vinyl records sound better. You asked me, what is your favorite sound? And I answered authenticity. I got to stand in this place of real, right?
Majesty.
Right. The universe works in this certain way, and getting back to the right. Poetic place. Yes. And then my answer to what the sound I hate the most or dislike the most, which is like a certain characteristic of digital recording, is not poetic at all, and maybe and actually just really in some ways, like you bring up these higher quality digital formats, was like beta versus VHS, right?
Right.
There was a certain
DVD, Blu-ray, Laserdisc.
Right. There's a certain, same thing that we're talking about happens in film in some way too, right? Where you're like, we keep saying that digital video is just as good as film, but there's stuff that happens when you record with film. And there's compromises you have to make. And then in the business, they call it, there's stuff you get for free. The way that digital fails, it's kind of harsh and abrupt and cold and a matter of fact. Digital does really well until it doesn't. Analog fails slowly. It dissipates. It curves as it fails. Mm-hmm. It softens as it fails. Mm-hmm. Digital just stops. It clips. Once you go past zero, there's no with analog, there's a little bit of distortion, and there's heat, and there's things that happen. And often a lot of the sounds we love are sounds that have been distorted guitar, right? Are sounds we've discovered by pushing into places where you weren't supposed to go. The equipment wasn't designed to do that. And, some dude smoking a spliff, and it's like, I don't care. It sounds good to me. Turn up the low, turn it up. Like, you're not supposed to use it that way. And it's like, who said I'm not supposed to use it that way? And then, you can see automatically we're in a little bit more authentic space.
For links or show notes, visit our website or follow us on social media, and be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Colorado Vibe on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, enjoy the vibe.